Dear colleagues, you are welcome to Module 3, Stakeholder and Consultations. This is the third of 9 modules in this blended learning course designed by the DIMA project stakeholders. This blended course was designed to supplement a toolkit for developing, implementing and monitoring adult education strategies that is available freely to you on the DIMA website. This course and the toolkit is designed for use by any person involved in policy making, but particularly for those who make policy in adult education. Those policymakers may be at a high government level or at a very field level in agencies and delivering content. We hope you find this content of particular use. On this slide, you will see a list of the partner countries involved in the DIMA project. They are Cyprus, 2 partners, and 1 partner each from Ireland, Slovenia, Slovakia, and Belgium. For more information on the project and the partners, please visit the DIMA project website. The learning outcomes that we expect at the end of this module are, at least, that you will be able to describe the steps in designing an adult education stakeholder policy consultation process, and that you will be able to present one model of an adult education stakeholder policy consultation process that is both appropriate and beneficial to you as a policy maker and beneficial to the engagement of the widest number and range of stakeholders in the whole process. For the purposes of this module, it is important for us to point out that we intend to use consultation and stakeholder engagement as equivalent. We will use the term consultation to apply to both. We also want to point out that the context of a consultation will influence the outcome, for better or indeed for worse. This will become clearer as we progress through these slides, because we will point out situations where the context may change the outcome. Having said this, the content in the following slides is for general application. Firstly, we have to ask, who is a stakeholder? And it is defined as a person or agent who has a stake in a decision-making process and its effects. Following, we have to ask, who can be consulted? It can be direct stakeholders, referring back to the definition of stakeholder. It can be indirect stakeholders, because the people who may be affected may not be directly the stakeholder. It may be agents or agencies. It may be experts and commentators and other vested interests. Persons who are associated with adult education, with citizenship, with enterprise, with society's functioning, and particularly with building up knowledge, skills, and competencies. A consultation is a formal process through which an agent collects inputs from stakeholders about policies, plans, activities, and other aspects. Consultation is ideally a continuous process that complements other modes of formal stakeholder interaction, such as those required in governance meetings, audits, promotions, and public events. The Toolkit, Developing, Implementing and Monitoring Adult Education Strategies, and particularly Module 2, Needs Analysis, is important in the context of engaging for consultation. We're suggesting that a consultation process can be structured in 3 interacting phases. The first phase is problem definition. The second phase is selection of the target group. The third phase is data collection and analysis. Anyone who has already referred to Module 2, Needs Analysis, will note that these are 3 steps in the needs analysis process. Each phase consists of several consecutive steps, which provide a framework for a high-quality, transparent stakeholder consultation, which we will describe in greater detail following. We are suggesting a 3-phase consultation strategy. Phase 1 is to establish the consultation strategy by setting expected outcomes, identifying stakeholders, designing the actual strategy itself, selecting the appropriate consultation tools, and selecting the appropriate consultation process. Phase 2 is conducting the consultation work. In this phase, we refer to publicizing and inviting engagement, conducting the consultation, collecting the consultation feedback, and then analyzing that feedback. In Phase 3, we refer to informing policy and strategy making. This will involve producing consultation outcome reports, discussing the outcomes with agency governance structures, circulating reports to stakeholders, and then circulating outcomes through reports much more widely. There are 3 models that we suggest for identifying stakeholders. Any of us involved in policy making and consultation will know it is easy to return to the same tried and tested stakeholders. So the first model is the usual suspects, that is, the same stakeholders as we have used previously. The second model is the unexpected stakeholders. That is to ensure that those who are not involved previously are invited into this consultation. The third model is a snowball process. A snowball gathers snow as it rolls along. This process is particularly important for engaging others, particularly those who are in marginalized segments of the community. It is particularly effective if we can engage others to themselves engage the more marginalized, because reaching marginalized communities is not an easy process. So we identify stakeholders by asking knowledgeable informants, interviewing already known stakeholders, and using social networks to identify excluded stakeholders. By focusing on widening the net, we can make our consultation and stakeholder engagement much more effective. However, if we do not focus on that, then we end up working with, consulting, and engaging the usual suspects. There is also an issue of increasing the width and the depth of the consultation. By having direct access to all stakeholders, we have the possibility of including the silent majority, the peripheral minority, and those either directly but particularly indirectly affected. By using stakeholder representatives, persons or agents who represent stakeholders, this can be a particularly important route to engage with more and wider stakeholder groups. However, it is important as part of the consultation process that these persons or agents who represent stakeholders are mentored and trained to reach out to a wider range of groups. Simply, we can look at two types of or forms of consultation. Those of us that have experience in undertaking consultation processes will realize these are real life settings. There is adversarial consultation, where people are enabled to argue for their own interests and talk about what is most advantageous to their cause. This will happen naturally in some settings, but needs to be organized in other settings, particularly where groups and individuals may feel disempowered or have experience and history of being disadvantaged. There is also the non-adversarial form of consultation, where the people consulted are encouraged to act for the benefit of the whole community. This brings a wholeness and integratedness to the consultation process, but does require particular attention to ensure that certain groups are not either ignored or left out. We suggest that better consultation can be achieved through universality, which is whatever system it is designed so it applies to everybody. It is particularly designed so that it is inclusive. So inclusiveness is our second step in better consultation. This leads to the third step, which is that the consultation is better if it focuses on the most marginal, those who are on the edge, those who are most marginalized. And fourthly, consultation is better if it is a dialogical process, that it engages dialogue rather than information taking or information giving. It is a two-way process of dialogue. This will ensure that the consultation seeks agreement and separates it from disagreement. It will also ensure that there's a building of trust rather than mistrust. In this context, we suggest you refer back to Module 1, What is Policy?, to consider how policy fits within this notion of better consultation. Perhaps the following questions will help in your consultation design. What level of participation is expected? In relation to the stakeholder lists, who should and who must be included? What is the best means of communication for consultation? What resources are required? What are the limitations of the consultation process? What is the best timing and method of feedback. The tools that we used, have we brainstormed to find creative and helpful tools? And importantly, when is the consultation complete? The following will shed further light on some of these questions. Consultations may have different purposes, so it is important to ask, is the aim of the consultation to give information, to get information, to exchange information, to gain partial or full policy agreement, to check on the impacts of policy, or to input into the renewal of policy? Consider these. Some are not really consultation processes. They may be information processes. But many consultation processes are actually limited to getting or giving information. And we want to widen that understanding of consultation. So the aim of the consultation will impact on the width and the depth of the consultation. We also need to consider levels of engagement. Here we've presented a graphic of it. The levels of engagement can range from being informed, through being asked, commenting on decisions, developing solutions, to actually being partners in decision making. There is a very significant difference from being informed to being full partners in decision making. On the other side of this slide, you can see that we are moving from consultation through engagement to partnership. So the higher levels of consultation are actually a partnership process. But there are many barriers to stakeholder engagement and consultation. It is important to consider these barriers. Barriers such as the participative capacity of stakeholders, reaching hard-to-reach groups. What about contested or divided communities? What about geographically isolated communities? And let us consider literacy and numeracy isolation, particularly in communities where there is a dominance of oral culture, but equally where cultures are modernized and there are significant sections of that community who have literacy and numeracy limitations. When we consider the scope of consultation, we can see that consultation can range from single issue consultation to broad general issue consultation. Consultations have been organized and delivered specifically to consult about narrow single issues. There are implications of narrowing the consultation. Equally, we have seen very broad and general consultations, and there are implications of this as well. We cannot suggest that one is better than the other, because it depends on the context. Particularly, it depends on the expected outcome and the principles being applied to the consultation process. We referred earlier to when is the consultation complete. We should also refer to how long will the consultation take. So when we consider consultation timescale, We can talk about one-off, brief consultation events or extended consultation events. We can also consider ongoing consultative processes and synchronous or asynchronous consultative interaction. We suggest that an ongoing process that enables the greatest level of engagement is significantly preferable to once-off brief consultation events. However, we want to note that it is difficult to maintain consultation over longer periods. This is an important and probably not often considered point. The point is that stakeholders' previous experience influences their receptivity to consultation. If the stakeholders' previous experience was unsatisfactory, it will take longer to develop a trusting relationship for the present consultation process. In general, it is found that the greater number of people involved previously in various consultation processes, the harder it is to involve a wider population in this round. The following aspects need to be considered in relation to this. You need to consider the numbers of people to be engaged. You need to consider the method of engagement. You need to consider the effect of the engagement. And you need to consider particularly the levels of polarization and trust breaking that happened previously. In designing a consultation, it is important to consider the following issues: the techniques and the engagement methods to be used. Does the process need independent facilitation? What about the location and the accessibility of the consultation venues? The number and the type of the consultation events. Access and transportation requirements, childcare, vulnerable adult, etc. requirements, the format and the content of the communication and the publicity to be used. There may be a need to use interpreters and signers, and the role of outreach. These are just 9 of many factors that need to be considered in the design stage. Time and resources are always limiting factors. So consider input by staff, volunteers, and others who are willing helpers. Consider background information that may need to be provided. Consider independent facilitation. Consider communication, promotion, venue hire, transport, childcare, translation, and the write-up of the consultation outcomes. Consider printing costs, circulation of draft reports, and feedback. Consider resources to disadvantaged stakeholder groups. Some groups may need resources just to be able to participate. Consider resources to stakeholder groups who themselves commission research, convene meetings, prepare reports, make proposals, etc. You can see there is a lot to be considered in this section. Let us consider consultation structures for a moment. Creative design of consultation structures will impact on stakeholder engagement. We refer to creative methods of engaging in later slides, and we've already referred to the challenges of engaging. Creative use of subcommittees facilitate multiple levels of involvement. Creating working groups and subcommittees at different levels widen the engagement and allow peers to engage across their sections. We also suggest that the use of committees, working groups, social media events and open evenings, etc. add to the diversity of stakeholder engagement, which adds to the richness of the consultation. Feedback is also a very important issue in consultation. Too often, those consulted never hear anything back from those who've consulted them. We emphasize that stakeholder consultation is a process. We refer to this in a number of modules, including Module 4 and Module 8 in the Toolkit. But the following should be considered: how and when feedback should be provided, further opportunities for engagement, opportunities to make presentations of the findings back to the stakeholders. That is, presentation opportunities. Opportunities for implementation in It is critical that any engagement process is evaluated. Ongoing or phased and final evaluation should be scheduled in the consultation plan. Evaluation can provide valuable feedback to inform future engagement processes. We refer you to Module 7, Monitoring and Evaluation, in the DIMA Toolkit and later on in this blended learning series. We suggest that setting standards is important and that policymakers should set particular standards that they would seek to achieve. The following should be considered: a standard for involvement, a standard for support, a standard for planning, a methodology standard, a process standard, an information standard, a feedback standard, and a monitoring and evaluation standard. You can reference previous consultations, consultation by other stakeholders, consultations by other government agencies, consultations that has happened within your sphere of influence and outside your sphere of influence. The possibility of exchanging with other communities and other countries is very valuable in identifying standards that could be achieved in holistic consultation. Creativity in stakeholder engagement is particularly important in adult education. Adult education, by its nature, is a creative endeavour. So in our consultation, creative methods can and should be used. Methods such as video, photography or audio, songs, various art forms and works of art, public events, street stalls, graffiti walls, web-based engagement, very important, and open space technology, very important. Citizen juries and panels, future searches, simulation activities, open focus groups, depiction through drama, street debates, policy mapping and surveys, using documentaries as a way of engaging. Audio, video, acted discussion starters to involve people in unpacking the issues around the topic being discussed and then collecting their feedback. These are only some of the very creative ways that are used by stakeholders and by policymakers to involve people in policy making. So colleagues, we have arrived at the end of Module 3. This presentation has taken almost 30 minutes. We hope you found it useful. Thank you.